Hello, everyone. Good morning. I see folks hopping on to the webinar currently. Welcome, welcome. See some familiar names. Hello, everyone. We're excited to have you with us. We'll give just a moment for everybody to get on here. Normally, we're all hanging out prior to the conversation. Everybody's drinking their coffee and making small talk. I'm modeling with my coffee here. It's a little harder to have the small talk over webinar. But we're excited to have you all here. We have Will Stewart, the Executive Director of Stay Work Play New Hampshire. And,
hello, everyone.
We'll just see a few more folks coming on, so we'll just give it another moment here, and then we'll get started. All right, looks good. All right, once again, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Coffee and Conversations. Thank you for joining us in this virtual format. This is our second time doing it. We did it last month, and you can check that presentation out from Sarah Reitzman, who also blogs with Stay Work Play New Hampshire. She's the Executive Director of the Seacoast Housing Coalition. And you can check that out on the Carsey website if you missed it. But this morning we have Will Stewart from Stay Work Play. Will was named the Executive Director of Stay Work Play New Hampshire in September of 2017. And in this role, he's responsible for the overall management of Stay Work Play and oversees the development, growth, and implementation of the organization's mission, programs, and budget. He also serves as the organization's key spokesperson and as an advocate for the attraction and retention of younger workers in New Hampshire. He's actively involved in community efforts. Will also serves as the Ward 2 Alderman on the City of Manchester Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Will, thank you so much for being here. We are thrilled to have you.
Thanks, Jordan. It's great to be back here at Coffee and Conversations, and very excited to chat today and talk a little bit about our Stay Work Play's recent Policy Pints series that took us all across the state, and going to talk a little bit about what we learned talking to young people in the various corners of New Hampshire. What they feel that's the same, some differences in different areas, and I think it's going to be hopefully enlightening to everyone, and definitely want this to be a conversation. So I would encourage folks to, if you have any questions at any time, put them down in the Q&A box down there at the bottom. Jordan is going to be monitoring those, and he'll interrupt me at any time with any of your questions. So don't be shy about doing that, Jordan. And I suppose if everyone's ready, we can jump right in and get started.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, give me a second to share my screen here, and we will start this party.
Okay.
All right. We good?
Yeah, it looks like we're good.
All right. So as Jordan said, my name is Will Stewart. I'm the Executive Director of Stay Work Play New Hampshire. And for those of you who might not be familiar with the organization, we're a statewide nonprofit whose mission is to attract and retain more young people here in the Granite State. And why is that important? Why do we need more young people? Well, first of all, we're the second oldest state in the country by average age here in New Hampshire. We're tied with Vermont for being the second oldest state, second only to Maine. A little bit of trivia for you there. A lot of people think Florida might be the oldest state in the country. Nope, it's Maine. New Hampshire is tied for number 2. So that's a little bit of a challenge. Prior to this pandemic anyway, and I haven't seen the latest data to compare, but historically we've had, at least I say historically, in the past decade or so, have had one of the lowest unemployment rates in the country. Pre-pandemic, about 2.5, 2.6%. So it's challenging for our employers here to have the young talent that they need to do the jobs we all need them to do to run our organizations, as well as communities, not having people coming up in the ranks to serve on things like planning boards and conservation commissions, as well as nonprofits to serve on boards, and everything that we need, our communities and our society to function. We need a steady flow of talent coming up. And this is all exacerbated by the fact that New Hampshire is number one. We're number one, not a good number one though, in the percentage of high school graduates that we export out of state to attend a 4-year college. So if a high school graduate is wanting to get a 4-year degree, 61% of those students are leaving the state to pursue that degree. So a lot of them, some of them will come back. As I was just talking with Nick at the Carsey School, he did after 10 or 11 years out on the West Coast, but a lot of them don't. So it really is kind of a perfect storm of why we need more young people in New Hampshire and why Stay Work Play exists. So as I mentioned today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about what's called our Policy Pints series that Stay Work Play did for the first time this past fall and winter, kind of in the September to January timeframe, where we went all across the state in 9 locations, in fact, talking to young people. And when I say young people, in this case, kind of the 21 to 39 cohort, talking to this group about, what's important to them. What do they like about where they live, their region of the state? What don't they like? What might lead them to leave one day? So why did we do this? We did it to inform our advocacy efforts at Stay Work Play. This is something advocacy that the organization started just last year in 2019 with the 2019 legislative session. In a nonpartisan, issues-based advocacy. Kind of recognizing that if we want to be influential in what we do as an organization, that we can. Kind of our bread and butter has always been marketing and branding the state as a place of opportunity for young people. And we still do that. We've always done it. We always will do it. It always needs to be done. However, we recognize that if we really want to move the needle on things that are important and that matter long term, that we need to be involved in the public policy space, and particularly weighing in on things, again, that are important to young people and might impact their decisions to stay in or leave New Hampshire. Now, when we started off our nonpartisan issues-based advocacy program last year, we did so really based on a lot of data that we commissioned a survey that was conducted back in December 2017, really collecting those data points on why young people stay and why they go. And so as we wanted to enter into this year's legislative session, we decided, well, let's make sure, everything is still good. Might want to make sure we still have our finger on the pulse of what young people around the state are thinking and feeling. So we went out across the state to do just that. So how did we do it? We, a lot of organizations that do advocacy do something similar every year, before the legislative session. A lot of times it will could involve things like surveys, online surveys, or focus groups like you see here. Bring a bunch of people into the organization's conference room, kind of have a round robin, people talking about what they're worried about, what their concerns are, and then the organization would kind of take all that feedback and kind of form it into an advocacy plan or program, some priorities for the organization. Now, no offense to organizations who do that. It's all good and well, and worked well here for the Simpsons, as we can all see. But we thought that if we wanted to get this, our demographic, again, kind of that 21 to 40, 39-year-old demographic, we wanted to get 35, 40 of these folks in a room on a random weekday night. We figured we might want to try and make it a little bit more fun, a little bit more of an incentive to come out, than just sitting around a conference room table in a nondescript office. So We thought, how better, to do that than to offer beer. And instead of holding these events in a nondescript, again, conference room, how about craft breweries across the state and pubs? Because what's better than craft beer in general and free craft beer in particular? So that's kind of hence the name, Policy and Pints. So how do we find these young people that we talk to? We partnered with the state's Young Professionals Networks, and there are a few more than a dozen across the state right now, kind of fanned out. So we were able to partner with a lot of these organizations to reach their members, to bring them in for these policy and pint sessions in different corners of the state. But we also recognize that not every young person, of course, is a member of their local Young Professionals Network. We certainly encourage it, but a lot of people aren't, and that's okay. So we also ran targeted Facebook ads in the 9 areas that we were coming to, reaching young people, kind of in this demographic, and inviting them to come out, share their experiences, and have a free beer on us. So, as you can see from this map here, we went to, as I mentioned, 9 locations, and it was the series was, I should note, generously sponsored by New Hampshire Housing and the Nature Conservancy in New Hampshire, and took us from Littleton and the Mount Washington Valley up north, all the way down to Nashua in the south, from Keene in the west, all the way to Exeter on the Seacoast in the east, and kind of everywhere in between. And it was a lot of fun. Doesn't this look more fun than sitting around that boring conference room table? It was for us anyway. And I really think the kind of the casual, laid back, atmosphere really made for kind of an engaging, maybe a more engaging conversation, in my opinion, than you would typically have in a more formal setting that these kind of focus groups might typically take. And let's be honest, the beer didn't hurt on that account either. So don't get me wrong. We still had a lot of the accoutrement that you see with these types of events. We had the flip charts, we had the markers, we had the stickers. So we had all the hallmarks, just in a different, more relaxed setting. And so how do we do it? What was the format? The thing we did was kind of the way it worked is we would just ask, first of all, hey, what do you like about where you live? What do you like about the Upper Valley or the Seacoast, or wherever we happen to be? And we would put that, as you can see, under a kind of a stay heading, stay, work, play. And then once that conversation had kind of exhausted itself, we would ask, okay, those were the positives. What are kind of the negatives? What don't you like about where you live? What might lead you to leave one day? Be honest. And we didn't want to dwell on the negative. That's why we started with the positive. We wanted to have kind of a balance. But again, if we're doing this to inform our advocacy efforts, we need to have an honest appraisal of what people don't like about where they live, so that we can address these things, not just as an organization, but as communities and as a state as well. So, yeah.
So we have a question. Do you mind if I pop in here?
Not at all.
So we have a question here from Rob Werner, Concord City Councilor. It says, thanks for joining us today. Asked, what did you learn about support for policies to encourage the development of clean energy economy and jobs, while also protecting the environment, meeting the challenges of climate change? And maybe you'll discuss that a little bit further, but...
Yeah, we definitely heard about, I wouldn't say clean jobs in particular, but we heard a lot about the environment as a whole, and about the state's outdoor recreational areas, and those being reasons that people really love being in New Hampshire. Particularly the closer one is to the recreational areas, it was definitely got higher marks as a reason to stay here. And even those who were farther away, even in the Nashua area, would talk about having the access to those areas as being a very important driver for staying here. So we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit more, but it's definitely a theme that we heard for sure. So, after we had people talk about what they like about their areas where they live and talk about, what might lead them to one day leave, then we'd take a break. And I'm sure a lot of you have been in these, types of events where we handed out the stickers. Everybody got 5 little stickers, as you can see, all these different colors up here on the screen. And we asked people to vote on, the issues that they felt are most compelling with regard to leaving. What we asked them, what does Stay, Work, Play, and the state most need to focus on of these challenges, and so, like I said, everyone had 5 stickers, and they could distribute those however they liked. If people felt super strongly about an issue, they could put all 5 stickers on, one issue. Or they could distribute them evenly, 1 sticker for 5 issues, or any kind of variety or variation there in between. We kind of took a little bit of a break while we did that, and then we came back and were able to identify the top 3 issues based on the number of stickers received. And then we spent the remaining 15, 20 minutes of each session kind of brainstorming solutions. How can we address these things? What can be done? Not just Stay, Work, Play, but in general, what can be done to address these particular problems that the group who was just sitting there in the room had determined to be the highest priorities. So what did we hear? In all, as you can see, we heard from 307 people total across these 9 areas. We had some regional differences, as I alluded to, and we'll talk about those here in the coming slides. But we had a lot of similarities too. The top thing that we heard everywhere was housing affordability, or that is to say, housing that's not affordable. We heard it in the populated, areas in the south and east of the state, and all the way up north too. And it's one of those things where housing is certainly cheaper the farther north one goes. But I remember hearing, I think it was Ben Frost at one of these past coffee and conversations, saying that even in Coos County, it might be the cheapest in the state, but it's the least affordable, because the salaries and wages are measurably or relatively lower as well. So it's something we heard everywhere, bar none. Top issue for young people in the state of New Hampshire. That's high-level takeaway for today. Housing, big deal. We also heard about a lack of diversity, here in the state, and that's something we heard a little bit about in our in the survey we did back in December 2017. But this really added some context to that and some nuance, and we heard about it, all across the state. In some places more than others. Nashua and Manchester heard about it less, as you might expect. Heard about it more, in places like the Upper Valley. But it was definitely a consistent theme across the state. And then finally, we heard that it's hard to meet people here. And this was, again, not a surprise based on our survey that we did in 2017. The biggest kind of surprise that came out of that survey was the fact that 21% of respondents said that they didn't have a single friend in New Hampshire. The friendless fifth, it's been termed, which is really sad, on a personal level, that people don't have a single friend in close proximity to them. But definitely from a workforce retention standpoint, very, very concerning. Because if somebody doesn't have a friend where they are, their job's probably just a job. And I think they're that much more likely to leave if they get offered another job somewhere else that offers them more money or advances their career or takes them back to where their friends and family are. So this was not a surprise, and is definitely, kind of making connections for people has definitely become a priority for Stay, Work, Play. So with that, let's talk a little bit about some of the differences that we saw around the state, shall we?
Hey, Will.
Yeah.
We have a few questions, I think, from that last slide. Some of the folks.
Absolutely. Let's have it.
Yeah. So I've got 3 questions here. The first one from Jen. She says, having worked in the environmental sector for the past 23 years, I'm curious what the perception of lack of environmental protection was.
We heard that a little bit specifically. I believe I'll look at here at the the one pagers here in a moment, but definitely heard that up north a little bit more than we did in any other part of the state. So it was a little bit on the radar. I would say environmental regulation, again, just like clean jobs, wasn't it's a fairly specific issue that wasn't widespread, but again, kind of the environment in general was definitely I would say a higher theme as well.
Okay. Next question is from Allie. Says, I'm noticing daycare on the leave list. This was a big concern for our family when we came back to New Hampshire to start our family. There are not that many spots for infants, especially in the Concord area, and we were lucky to get one of the few offered by the Child and Family Development Center. You may know that the NHTI is trying to close that facility. What do we do in institutions like this, which was not only created by the state to offer quality childcare, but train future teachers, are closed? Childcare is a big issue for lots of younger families right now as we think about reopening. We need more spots, not less, and the CFDC was part of creating more supply beyond the walls of their own center. So, so I mean, really the question embedded in that is, institutions like this, when they're closed, what kind of challenges, I guess, does that create?
It's a huge challenge. I mean, it's you talk about workforce and needing workers in the workforce. People can't work if they don't have adequate childcare, and sometimes if people are working just to pay for childcare, it's it doesn't make any sense either. Childcare, affordable and available childcare, I should say, as we'll see, toward the end of the presentation, is one of our policy priorities, this legislative session, and it's. We definitely want to see more childcare slots, more affordable slots, so that people don't leave to go where there is better childcare, where they can get family members to take care of it out of state or something like that. So I am aware of the issue there at NHTI. I've been having some conversations with some of the organizers. There is an organized group that's working to advocate for the return, of the center. And as I understand it, it's, not only does it provide childcare, but it's actually training childcare workers too, which is super important as well. So it's, it's something that Stay Work Play is having some conversations about. And but I would encourage, Allie and, anyone else to whom this is a priority, and I would argue it's a priority for us all, whether you have kids who would need childcare or not, to get involved, to advocate and to stand up and make your voice heard to the decision makers who can, influence whether that program comes back or not.
Awesome, thanks, Will. So we have another comment from Barbara Richter. She says, while New Hampshire does have high housing costs, it's lower than Massachusetts. So, why doesn't New Hampshire use this as a positive selling point? The affordability as compared to, the greater Boston area, for instance.
Right. It's, everything's relative. That is true. Another thing that's lower than Massachusetts, would be wages, here in New Hampshire too. So, I think it could certainly be a selling point for those who, live in Massachusetts right now, particularly in the Metro Boston area, to have New Hampshire be a possibility for them where they could get more housing for their dollar, certainly. But again, we have a supply and demand issue too, and that could lead to other challenges. Again, there's no clear-cut issue here, but more demand obviously will raise prices for everyone. So I think one of the things we're advocating for at Stay Work Play is to increase the supply of housing across the state, to make it easier, to build, rental housing, for sale, housing as well, so that everybody, who wants to live here can afford to do so.
Awesome. Another question that's sort of along the same vein from Jen. Is there any possibility to create affordable housing for an age group of 20 to 39? Similar to what's been done for those over 55. And if you were to try to do something like that, would that be a state initiative, or it's something you'd want to do more on the local municipal level?
Yeah, I will preface, everything I say by saying that, I'm not certainly a subject matter expert in, housing or, diversity or, meeting people. And I would defer to people like Sarah Reitzman, who was presenting to us last month here, and other housing experts at New Hampshire Housing and other places. But it's certainly, I will say, I think an interesting idea, where you have a lot of communities, community by community they have different zoning laws, and different processes for building and incentivizing different types of housing. And you're right about the kind of the 55 plus housing that kind of the joke I've heard among housing advocates is a developer who wants to build a 55 plus development can walk in the town hall and get a building permit like this. The common perception, I would say misperception, being that those are great because seniors don't have kids in schools and aren't burdening the taxpayers, et cetera. Whereas in a lot of communities, if somebody proposes building rental housing, just an apartment complex or some townhouses or something, that planning and zoning boards and voters in particular are very wary of those. They think, again, people are going to move in with lots of kids. Kids will be in school. That's going to raise their property taxes. So it's definitely an interesting idea. I don't have the data to say what that would look like, but it's certainly intriguing.
Awesome. So we have a couple comments here on the housing from some of our experts, and then one more question, I think, before we get moving back. Ben Frost commented here. He's with us today. Hello, Ben. He says, access to mass transit in Massachusetts is a factor that mitigates the relatively higher cost of housing. The combined costs of housing and transportation here in New Hampshire are high. We're also competing with other parts of the country and losing out.
Yeah, transportation is certainly something we heard about both in our 2017 survey and in this series. And a lot of folks were saying just to come to one of these events had to drive 20 or 30 miles, and said if you don't have a car or some type of private vehicle in New Hampshire, you're kind of out of luck. And even if you live in the larger cities which have transit systems, just being able to, they don't always, they might run from like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and come around once an hour. They're not exactly convenient. So it's a huge issue for sure.
Yeah. And Sarah Reitzman also with us today. Hi, Sarah. She says, hi, thanks for the shout out. And thanks, Jen, for the idea. And it's actually, she says, currently being discussed in the legislature. If passed, HB 1629 would apply the incentives for age-restricted housing to all housing.
And that is one of the bills that Stay Work Play is supporting this year.
Awesome. All right, so we have one more question here from Cindy. Cindy Hartman. She works with the UNH Department Recreation Management and Policy, and she sees that lack of central gathering place was stated as a reason to leave. She wonders if you could expand on that a little bit further.
Yeah, we heard in different pockets of some being of some folks saying particularly in perhaps the less populated areas, of just not having a place to go and to be able to congregate with others. Again, obviously things are a little bit different these days with congregating people, but generally speaking, they said they just don't feel there's places for them. And I know this was Policy and Pints, and we kind of had people were there drinking beer and everything, but one of the comments we've heard too is that it's tough to find kind of third spaces, as they're called, that don't center around alcohol. And like if you don't drink, what do you do? And so we're pleased to see a few other other places popping up that aren't alcohol centric. I think places like Boards and Brews in Manchester, for example, they're popping up and becoming popular as kind of gathering spots. So that's kind of what that was, where that kind of came from.
Okay, great. And as you were answering that, we had one more question come in, and it's from Debbie, who says, "I work with low-income students in the state who are trying to go to college. Low-income students and families were probably not highly represented in your focus groups. As you mentioned, the fact that we export more college students than any other state is a big issue. New Hampshire is also 50th out of 50 states in support to higher education. Is there any advocacy happening to encourage the state to support higher education so we can have more affordable public institutions in the state?"
Yes. It's certainly a priority for ours. And again, I'll jumping ahead a little bit, but another one of our policy priorities this year is student debt, education debt, and the flip side of that, which is the high cost of higher education here in New Hampshire. You're absolutely right that New Hampshire is we're dead last in per capita funding for the college and university system here. And, so we have, as a result, I love UNH, but it's the most expensive public university in the country. And that puts it out of reach for a lot of people who would otherwise like to go. And I know that, UNH is, doing a lot. The state's trying to do a little bit, but still, we need the political will to invest more in our higher education system so that we can retain more young people here that will ultimately stay here in the long run. So that's a priority of Stay Work Play. And I know several other organizations too, the Business and Industry Association, and a number of others, who recognize. And that was kind of one of our bigger pushes in last year's legislative session when lawmakers were making the biennial budget, was to increase funding, for both the university system, and the community college system, as well.
Thank you.
All right, we good, Jordan?
I think so. Yes, we just have one other comment. It looks like from
Sure.
Bill, who says current coronavirus pandemic is showing us very clearly that mass transit and high population density could, accelerate spread of disease. So in that way, New Hampshire's lack of density is in this instance an advantage.
Perhaps, yeah. I don't have the data on all of that. But again, one thing to keep in mind, if that is true, that, the pandemic isn't going to last forever. And, I still think we need, high quality public transportation, to make owning a car, have that be an option, but not a necessity, if you don't want to. And that's not just for young people, I would argue, but for, again, we're the second oldest state, it would definitely, I would say, more benefit seniors who can't or don't want to drive, but still need to get around and be active. So I guess if with that, we can move right along a little bit, talk about some of the regional differences that we saw across the state. Kind of start in the Manchester, Nashua areas, of course, the most populated areas of the state. Some of the things we heard here, again, not too many surprises on the stay side, that basically employment opportunities, access to jobs, being big reasons to stay. Makes sense. They also talked about growing arts, which we heard about in several places, growing arts scene, and diversity as well as being a strength in these higher population areas. And of course, as I mentioned, even though these are probably the farthest away from the state's kind of outdoor recreational amenities, they still appreciated being close to them and having access to these areas, as well as access to Boston as well. It's one of the things we heard, especially in Manchester and Nashua, saying, we're less than an hour to everything, which was a big pull. On the leave side, we talked about, we saw childcare, as we talked about, housing, of course. I probably don't need to say housing, just assume everyone, as you can see on the screen, housing was an issue every time, everywhere. Sometime it was looped into cost of living, that being the highest driver of cost of living in an area, but always there. One of the things we heard of interest in Nashua and Manchester on the leave side that we didn't hear a lot of other places really was funding for K-12 public education. We heard both kind of a general lack of funding in Manchester, which has one of the lowest, again, per capita investments in its public education system. And in Nashua, we heard about the lack of equality, across the schools there. Some neighborhoods, have better schools than others, they were saying. So again, those being reasons to potentially leave. So moving on to the to Greater Concord and the Seacoast, also relatively populated areas. Young people there, again, mentioned being kind of the natural beauty of the area, and of course, being close to outdoor recreation. They also both mentioned in these areas, which I thought was great, was how engaged the communities are. They felt that it's easy to make a difference, where they are, and it's certainly something that that we've been pushing, here at Stay Work Play, to get young people to get involved, in their areas, and making the contention that New Hampshire is a place where it is easier to make a difference, I would argue, than it is other places. You can do it faster. You can do it cheaper. You don't have to have lived here 20 years and know half the town to do something. And that was kind of really the big impetus of our New Hampshire Next Summit, our Changemaker Summit we had back a few weeks ago, to show that that's the case. And I was really glad to see those comments come out, both in the Concord area and in the Seacoast. We had, of course, obviously, housing affordability being an issue. One of the things that was a little bit surprising on the Seacoast, even there, people said they were having a hard time meeting people. And, I kind of expected to see that, more, again, the farther north and west that we went. And we did hear those things there. But even in the Seacoast, people were saying it's hard to meet people. So again, just really points to the fact that we need to be doing a lot more to get people to both meet each other and to get connected again to their communities, whether it's making a difference or in any other fashion. Create those connections and help young people put down roots. One of the comments that was made at the Seacoast, you may be able to see down there at the bottom of the screen, they said, New Hampshire is a great place to raise a family, but it's not so great a place to be single. We heard that, that over and over again, that it's hard to date, in New Hampshire. Just the pool isn't that great from a size. We have quality, but certainly not quantity here. So it's definitely an issue that again, we need to be cognizant of. So let's head up north for a little bit. As I mentioned, up north, we definitely heard the attendees cited the abundant kind of outdoor recreation and being so close to it, as a main reason to be there. They love being able to get out of work at 5 o'clock and be on the mountain at 5:30, skiing down. Or on the lake or whatever it is, they definitely love that. But on the flip side, we heard, again, not just housing, we heard, I'll point out to, I think it was Jen, who said, was talking about environmental protection. It was mentioned specifically in the North Country in our Littleton event of lack of environmental protection being a con there. But of course, they also mentioned jobs, both lack of jobs and low rates of pay. Of course, these areas we heard it kind of in the Lakes region too. Very tourism dependent, and a lot of jobs that are either seasonal or really aren't that high on the income scale. And we had somebody in Littleton who said, and this goes back to a little bit of transportation issues too, but also kind of the density. She said, I have a 40-minute commute just to buy food. Something that, those of us in, the southeast part of the state, not really an issue for us, but it's a reality up there. Had somebody in Conway, when we were in the Mount Washington Valley, said, and I still think about this one, she said, there aren't enough higher level jobs in the Valley. She said, I'm going to have to choose. And she said, it won't be long. She's going to have to choose between advancing her career on the one hand and living in the community of her choosing. That's real life. That's tough. She said there's nowhere else she'd rather live in the world than the Mount Washington Valley. But in her particular career field, she doesn't have a lot of choices if she wants to advance her career. She might be able to make a lateral move or two, but that's if she wants to move up, there aren't many options. So that's the reality for some people. Lakes region, heard similar themes. Again, another tourism dependent area. Again, loving the beauty, the outdoor recreation. They love that tight knit community. We heard that in several, perhaps the more the less populated areas. And they love the central location in the state where they can get where they need to go. But again, they cited housing housing costs, affordable childcare being an issue there, and lack of year-round opportunities. Again, very much in normal years, a lot of stuff in the summer, not so much the rest of the time of the year. And again, that goes back to lack of gathering places too. They might exist at some times in the year, but not, there aren't a lot of places that, for young people to go in February in the Lakes region. So it's, similar themes that we've been hearing. And somebody said that said you can't even have a baby delivered here in the Lakes region anymore. And so we also heard kind of a lot of these family themes with regard to, childcare and even, raising families, starting families, and having babies.
Awesome. Well,
check in, yeah.
Yeah, so we've got a few more questions here that have come up through those last few slides. So we've got someone here from the community college system. Says the community colleges in New Hampshire offer affordable and dynamic programs to meet the needs of those looking to get formal degrees or skills that translate into New Hampshire jobs. How can we make them better aware of those opportunities?
I think it's certainly something that, I like to say that New Hampshire is a state of best kept secrets. We have so many awesome things here, from, things to do, awesome people doing awesome things, great businesses, and again, great schools offering great programs. And the community college system is a perfect example of this. There are so many things, degree and certificate programs, other skills that you can acquire that people just don't know, what's available. And the types, I think a lot of people would be very surprised, as to what, they can do, what they can learn, so close to home. And I think, we all need to do a better job of promoting, ourselves. And, nobody's going to toot our own horn, here in New Hampshire, whether it's as a state or as an institution. I'm not from New Hampshire originally, and my theory, not to delve too far deeply into the collective psyche of the state, but I think it's that old Yankee mentality of like, we're just going to do our thing and let the results, our good work and our hard work speak for itself. And in some cases it does, but in a lot of cases it doesn't. So it's I don't know if I have a super specific answer. I mean, here at Stay Work Play, we certainly are working to promote the educational opportunities here, to the extent we can. Particularly, we're looking to get more into the high school space as well. We've really been traditionally focused on college age students on up to about age 40. But again, recognizing that if 2 out of 3 high school seniors who want an advanced degree or want a degree are leaving the state to do it, we need to do a better job of retaining those, not all of them, of course, but at least can we be middle of the pack, not be, number 1 in exporting? Can we be number 25? And I think a lot of that is being able to share, with that cohort, what exists and the relative affordability too, that they get the value for the dollar that they can get, in those programs. So I think, Stay Work Play, we have a role to play, as do, parents, school counselors, and communities themselves. We all have a vested interest in doing that.
Awesome, thank you. We have a question here from Sally. She says, New Hampshire depends on property taxes to fund government services, largely. This is definitely a major contributor to the cost of housing. It's a concern for all age groups. Did your panels discuss any other ways to fund government? Did they prefer an income tax, different kinds of taxes? Or did you hear anything about taxes from your focus groups?
Yeah, a little bit. Again, it wasn't like, a huge top tier issue, but it was mentioned in several of the Policy and Pints sessions. As you can see here on the one for the Monadnock region, one of the reasons for leaving was cited an over-reliance on property taxes. That was a top 3 reason to leave there. We also heard about, just kind of the, inequitable funding mechanisms that they said for the state, or at least an over-reliance. On solutions, one of the proposed solutions there in the Monadnock region was, and again, I'm not endorsing any of these, that would be something for our the advocacy committee and the board of directors at Stay Work Play. But one of the suggestions that was made was to have out-of-state visitors pay a higher proportion of the tax burden. more tolls, targeting Massachusetts and Vermont residents. And of course, this being in the Monadnock region, no tolls over in that area. So that was one idea. Others had mentioned, they had some people had mentioned income taxes and other variety of fees that might be used to offset those high property taxes. So it was definitely a conversation point for sure.
Nice. We have a question here from Michelle. It says, to the point of meeting people, where I came from, there was huge infrastructure for adult recreation teams of all kinds. Says there doesn't seem to be as much across the state for youth and adult team sports. Any insight into access across the state for those kinds of activities?
Yeah, it's those are definitely very important ways of that a lot of people can meet each other. Adult dodgeball leagues and 3-on-3 basketball and indoor soccer and that kind of stuff. There is a group here in the southern part of the state, or Seacoast, and I think Greater Manchester and Nashua based. I believe it's the New Hampshire Sports and Social Club that offers those types of opportunities. And those are things that we're looking. Stay Work Play last year started coming out with what we call our regional insiders guides that we're putting together for every region in the state, and really as a tool for employers to use to help sell their region. In addition to their company and the benefits they offer, and we want to have a section on there for how people can meet people and include, to the extent they exist, those kinds of sports and recreational leagues. And I know some towns, their municipal parks and rec departments will offer some of those types of things as well. But I agree, they are a great way, and things that a lot of people are looking for. We've heard from a lot of the the young professional networks themselves that are kind of moving toward still doing their traditional networking, where you go to a restaurant or a bar and people just grab a drink and a snack and chit chat. But a lot of people don't like that type of format. Like personally, I'm kind of an introvert, and but I do love, for example, I like riding my bike, and so a lot of groups are kind of moving toward activity based. Networking, if you want to call it that. So I would love, for a group to say, hey, let's meet down at City Hall at 6:00. We'll all ride our bikes around for an hour. And, for me, that's a much more natural way to get to talk to somebody, because I already have something in common with them. And then, that kind of conversation kind of leads organically to forming relationships. And, so I think to the extent that, all of us can promote and encourage and even organize these types of themed gatherings would be good.
Thank you. We have another question here from Jen. Says, I've been involved in the art community for over 20 years. I believe art and cultural opportunities provide a unique opportunity to invite and retain people in our communities. So providing and being involved in these opportunities are important to me. I'm curious how often this topic came up among younger people.
Yeah, it came up a decent amount, and it was. I'll preface it by saying that in our 2017 survey that we commissioned, kind of a lack of arts and culture was cited as a reason to potentially leave the state. When we were going around in the Policy Pints series, one of the things we heard was an appreciation of the growing arts and culture scene. And again, New Hampshire being a state of best kept secrets, there are numerous, opportunities in the arts across the state, whether it's performing arts or visual arts, music, theater. We have all kinds of great stuff. We have great galleries that exist that, again, a lot of people just don't know about. So again, we all need to do a better job of promoting what exists first and foremost, and working to because if people don't know they exist, they won't get involved. And if that's their thing, and they want it and they need it, and if they don't think it's here, they're that much more likely to leave and go someplace where they think it is. So it is a huge driver. We heard about it a lot, and at Stay Work Play, that is kind of a growing focus of ours, is to work to promote the arts here in New Hampshire. It's one of the reasons we had last year and this year, fingers crossed that we'll all be able to meet in the fall, our Rising Stars Awards. We hold it at the Courier Museum of Art in Manchester, as a means of helping to promote what exists here and that kind of that cultural infrastructure.
Awesome. We have another question here from Robin. What is Live Free or Swipe?
Yeah, so that was I couldn't resist putting that on the thing. So we talked about how difficult it is to date people, here in New Hampshire, find people to date. And so one of the ideas that was made, half seriously, half in jest, is that, we ought to create a dating app, a New Hampshire specific dating app called Live for Your Swipe, for dating, friendships, things to do. So, it got a big laugh from the room there in the Upper Valley where we met. So I had to include it as a proposed solution. So if anybody wants to get on that, I'm not an app developer. We're not at Stay Work Play. That's not our subject of expertise, but I will gladly relinquish that idea if somebody wants to take and run with it.
Nice. That is funny. One last question here in the queue from Bill. Here in the Lakes region, we have a critical shortage of building trades. Most contractors have a huge backlog of projects because they can't find young employees. How do we address this issue?
Yeah, it's that's a complex and complicated thing to answer, I think, and I don't have all the answers, but I think that first and foremost, growing the pool of potential workers generally, is critical, and that's where Stay Work Play comes in. For the trades in particular, I think we certainly need to do a better job of, encouraging, and again making young people aware of the jobs and the demand that exists for these programs. I have a third grader, and I'm serious when I said that, I hope my kid becomes a plumber, because every time a plumber comes to my house, I'm, there goes $250 minimum, and the demand is crazy. And it's that way. I was talking with somebody, who runs a construction company a few months ago up in the Lakes region. And, the guy said, look, we're basically we're poaching from each other, employees. He said, if you're a skilled tradesman or tradesperson, you can pretty much name your price. And, whatever that might be, welding or framing, even general construction workers, those wages are rising because they just can't find the people. So, increasing the supply, and that, I think is, helps with retaining more of the people we have, and attracting those from outside, and then, making young people more aware of what jobs and trades exist, and, the great benefits and the great quality of life, that you can have with those jobs. I'll say too, on a related note, that I mentioned the Young Professionals Networks earlier, and really at Stay Work Play, we used to use the term young professional a lot, as a kind of a general catch-all, for those under the age of 40. But we've since kind of turned, switched our language a little bit, because words matter, language matters, and we've kind of changed our wording to young people, recognizing that a lot of people don't see themselves in that young professional. What is young? What is professional? What does that mean? If I don't wear a tie, does that mean I'm not you don't want me here? So I think that to the extent we can all kind of use, move more to that young people language, to let people know, in the trades and in any situation that we want them here and they're welcome here.
Awesome. Thank you. We had one more question come up while you're talking there from George, who says, the Policy Pints series was such a great idea, provided tremendous insight on the issues and challenges young adults are dealing with. Is Stay Work Play able to stay connected to those attendees that wanted to help with advocacy and connect the folks that participated to advocacy, for housing or et cetera, groups at the local level?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something we're working to come up with a more formal method for that to happen. But kind of one of the secondary goals for the whole series was to identify young people across the state who, kind of the thought process being that if they care enough to come out on a random Wednesday night, and to talk about the issues they care about, that they're probably willing at least with a little coaxing and encouragement to reach out to their policymakers, whether at the state or local level, to be advocates, because, and that's certainly something that we want to encourage, and to really create kind of a cadre of advocates across the state who can reach out to the people who represent them personally. It's one thing, I'll show a slide here in a couple of minutes that, like, Stay Work Play again, we're in Concord. I have an orange badge. I'm a registered lobbyist. I'll go and testify on bills. But that's of course, legislators are going to expect, hey, that's Will Stewart with Stay Work Play. Of course, he's going to be there, talking about why we need to increase funding for college or have more affordable housing regulations. And that's, I'm the usual suspect in that case. And it's definitely worth me and us being there to represent those interests, because nobody else is in Concord representing the interest of young people. But I think it's so much more valuable to have for legislators to hear from people, who they represent, who actually vote for them, to talk about these things. So that was one of the goals. And we are starting to keep young people just, first of all, informed of what's going on in Concord, as it relates to issues that are important to them. And I have a little thing here in a minute I'll show. We have a new newsletter called the State House Skinny, that anyone can sign up for. And again, to keep people just kind of apprised of what's going on and opportunities to get involved. Here's this bill, here's what it's all about, here's what it does, here's why it's good or bad. And, here, find your legislator and call them, and here are some key talking points. So we definitely want to kind of build that out, as we move forward to help people become, advocates and advocate, again, both at the state and local level.
Thank you.
All right, we good?
We're good.
Okay. So, I talked a little bit about kind of what we heard in the Monadnock and the Upper Valley, kind of in the western region of the state. Again, they love the nature and the outdoors. They mentioned, being an arts and culture hub, particularly in Keene, being great. Of course, they mentioned kind of that community emphasis, that we saw. Both getting to know people, as well as they mentioned the buy local emphasis, in the Upper Valley, and really that kind of sense of community and the local aspect that they love. Of course, they also mentioned being hard to meet people, expensive housing, lack of cultural diversity, some of these that we've heard before. As I mentioned in the Monadnock region, they did mention the over-reliance on property taxes and a lack of young people in politics too. We didn't hear that anywhere else, but it was definitely a theme there. And I think after this, I think we were there, in October, just a few weeks after this, there were, city elections. And I know they have at least a couple of new city council members and a mayor now who are all under the age of 40. So maybe if we go back and do that again this year, we might not hear that one this year. We'll see. So I will mention, one of the quotes that sticks with me from the event that we had in Lebanon, the Upper Valley. Still, I think about this one probably more than anything else that I heard at any of the events. They said, the woman said, "The Upper Valley is a great place to raise a family, but it's a terrible place to try and start one." And I think a lot of people feel that way, not just about the Upper Valley, but New Hampshire as a whole, again, given the costs associated with, housing, childcare, if you can find a slot, all of the kind of related issues. I mean, New Hampshire all the time is rated so highly for quality of life and for raising a family, great schools, and all of those are selling points. And if you're established and you have all that, it's great. But making the hump, getting over that, being able to afford a place to have wages that are high enough, to be able to start a family and support a family, buy a house or have stable housing, whatever it is, can be a challenge for a lot of people. So it's I wouldn't say it's a comment that haunts me, but it's certainly I keep it at the forefront of a lot of what we're doing to make. We want to make New Hampshire a place where people we want them to stay. So let's make it easier for them to stay and to start those families and to have those kids. Again, second oldest state in the country. We need to get that birth rate up. That's not going to solve all of our problems, but it'll certainly help. Let's see. Okay, so that was kind of our tour around the state. And so here we can see, I kind of mentioned a couple of these, we took what we learned, as part of the Policy Pints series, in addition to, we're still using a lot of the data that we collected in December 2017, and a lot of the conversations that we have with both young people across the state and employers, as we have a group of about 50 organizations, leading employers across the state, called our Board of Advisors, that meet quarterly and really kind of help let us know what's going on from an employer perspective. And we take all of this input, and our advocacy committee at Stay Work Play, which is open to anyone. If anybody wants to join it, let me know. And really kind of came up with a set of, in this case, this year, 4 policy priorities, kind of overarching focus areas for the organization. increased housing affordability. Again, can't overstate the importance of this for young people here in the state. I mentioned decreasing education debt, student debt, and again, the flip side, both addressing that on the backside of people who have already graduated and who are struggling with this. And again, this kind of underscores and exacerbates all of the challenges, the financial challenges faced by young people here. Housing is relatively more expensive. Transportation is relatively more expensive. Because if people are paying, several $100s a month in student debt bills, that's less money they can put toward housing. It's less money they can put toward a car payment or anything, going out to eat at the local restaurant or buying a book at the local bookstore. So to the extent we can address the debt on the backside and decrease the debt that's accumulated on the front side by having a better investment in the higher education system here in New Hampshire, we want to do that at Stay Work Play. Mentioned of course, everything we heard about the outdoors and the environment. So protection, we call it protection of New Hampshire's outdoor advantage. A big reason that people stay here, young, old, everywhere in between. So let's, we need to, let's not kill the golden goose here, guys. We need to protect what we have, both from an environmental standpoint and all the recreational amenities, that exist. And, fingers crossed, we'll all be able to get back to those amenities and get outside in groups real soon. But in the interim, let's make sure we're protecting them. And then finally, new for this year, childcare. Affordable childcare, we've mentioned that several times, being a huge issue for people. And again, another added cost for folks. It's expensive. Again, if you can even find a slot for your kid, it can be tough. And so we want to see more affordable and available childcare. So, if you want to see, any of the specific bills that we're mentioning, I know Sarah Reitzman mentioned one of those with regard to incentives for housing, you can visit stayworkplay.org/advocacy and then click on the various subject matter priorities and see the specific bills that we're advocating on behalf of this year. You can also sign up there for the State House Skinny if you want to sign up for that email as well. So I mentioned, State House Skinny again, and as I mentioned earlier, one of the things, we don't just have these policy priorities, but we're actually going to Concord and advocating on behalf of them. This is just a picture of me at a recent bill hearing earlier this year, a Senate hearing for some bill or another. Can't remember the specific one here for this photo, but I am a registered lobbyist and up there, speaking on behalf of not just the organization, but again, New Hampshire's young people. A lot of groups, every organization under the sun, has its lobbyist up there, the automobile dealers and the hospital association, everybody. No one's up there lobbying and advocating for young people. So that is a role that we are filling. We also took what we learned in the Policy and Pints series, and we didn't just want to use them to inform our advocacy efforts and pop in and pop out of public hearings to testify on particular bills, but really wanted to help educate legislators of what we found out. So with support from Eversource, we held a legislative reception in the State House cafeteria back in January, and invited all the legislators to come, and we had these big blow-ups of the one-pagers that I showed on the screen, and we're able to have those one-on-one conversations. They can come and mill around and see what was important, to their young constituents in their regions, and what's important to the state, young people in the state as a whole, and other regions as well. So that the idea being to they can keep all of these issues in mind with the bills that we're advocating on, and generally speaking, so they know. Of course, I will say too that we did send an email, to all of the legislators, even those who were not able to come, with these regional, kind of one-pagers, so that even if they weren't there in person, they can still kind of see and learn about what their constituents are dealing with, their younger constituents. Of course, wrapping up, we recognize that not all of the challenges that we heard about have a legislative solution. I mean, public policy is great and is super important, but it can't solve all problems. Would that we could, mandate, I say this jokingly, would that we could mandate that, every young person in New Hampshire needs to have at least 5 friends, within a 20-mile radius. That's silly. We can't do that. So we're working, to create opportunities for young people to meet each other and to support organizations that do just that and promote those, being the sports and social networks we talked about earlier, the young professionals networks, and even now in this time of COVID-19, working to get people together virtually. This is just a screenshot of some of our attendees from the New Hampshire Next, a Summit for Young Changemakers that I mentioned earlier that we held back in late April. Again, with these working to have not just sessions that they could learn from and engage with, but also networking opportunities so they could get together and have some fun and meet people both before and after the events. So trying to do our part during this COVID-19 crisis as well. Making the state more welcoming to people of color. Again, not exactly something that we can legislate, and certainly, here at Stay Work Play, we don't have all of the answers, but we recognize that we can be a part of contributing to the conversation and helping to the extent that we can. So, in addition to Stay Work Play being an active participant of what's called Economic Vitality New Hampshire, EVNH. That's an initiative of the state's Division of Economic Development led by Will Arvello. We also, as part of our New Hampshire Next series this year, had a great panel discussion called Diversity Matters, where we had several young people of color talking about their lived experiences here in New Hampshire, what it's like, what the challenges are, how those of us who are white can help make the state, again, more welcoming. And it was a great conversation. And for what it's worth, and I think it's worth a lot, that session of all that we had won every single day for an entire week, that one was the most attended session of the entire week. So it's definitely, and I think really kind of reinforces the point that this is important to young people in New Hampshire living in a more diverse place. New Hampshire, of course, is one of the whitest states in the country. And so it's not just people of color who want a more diverse state. It's, white people too. They want to live in a place that has, more diverse people, more diverse thought. And if they don't have it here, they're going to go elsewhere to find those experiences. Kind of wrapping up, talk a little bit about, I've talked a little bit about what Stay Work Play is doing, but what can everybody else do? I mentioned I'll just mention a couple of things here today, 3 things maybe. One, talk to your legislators, about the issues that we've talked a little bit about today. Again, you talking to the legislator who represents you in Concord is worth like 10 of me as the Stay Work Play executive director talking about it, because I'm not actually voting for that person unless they live here in Ward 2 of Manchester. But your voice carries a lot more weight on these issues that we've talked about. I would also encourage everyone here to nominate any great young people that for Stay Work Play's Rising Stars Awards. This is our signature annual event in October, I mentioned, being held at the Courier Museum of Art. And this is something we do in conjunction with NHPR to really recognize and shine a spotlight on the incredible young people here in New Hampshire doing incredible things in an array of categories. You can learn more at stayworkplay.org/Rising Stars Awards, but really wanting to showcase what young people are doing here and what young people can do here, whether it's in entrepreneurship, being in the civic space. I know Sarah Reitzman is one of our award winners of years past. College student of the year, high school student of the year, intern of the year, and young person of the year. Because again, we really want to showcase New Hampshire as a place where people can make a difference and do awesome things. And to the extent we can shine a spotlight and let people know about that, I think the better. So please nominate you have through the end of the month, I believe May 29th is our deadline to nominate. So go do that today. And then finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't make a pitch and ask for your support for Stay Work Play. We are a statewide nonprofit, keyword nonprofit. We're a full-time staff of 3 with a budget of about $200,000. So to say we're under-resourced for the ginormous task that the mission that we're trying to accomplish is an understatement. But thankfully, we have a lot of great partners and a lot of great help that we get. But we don't receive any state funding. We're entirely funded by the private sector and individuals. So if you're an individual and you have the capacity, we would love any support you can give. If you're a member of an organization, maybe consider joining our board of advisors. Again, more information, be happy to chat with anybody about that. You can also find out more at stayworkplay.org. So that is, I hope I didn't go too long, Jordan. If we have time for more questions, would love to answer any that have come up.
Great. Yeah, we do. We've got another bucket of questions. I think officially we have about 5 minutes left.
Okay.
So, I'm okay to stay a few more minutes if you are, but also no pressure. Want to be respectful of your time, especially, when we're all online constantly, it can be hard to find those boundaries. So I want to make sure we're respectful.
Sure. No, I'm good to stick around.
Cool. All right. So first question here from Sarah. For young people who want to get involved, one of the great ways to lean into this and to learn more is to get involved with a nonprofit working on a topic that interests them. Has Stay Work Play considered putting together a guide to steer young people to the appropriate nonprofits or grassroots organizations for those folks?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. We don't have anything, currently, in the works in that regard, but I do think it's a great idea. We, for several years, we did a kind of almost a matchmaking that might be selling it a little much, but events we partnered with the young professional networks across the state, what we called Stay Work Play Give, and it was kind of a nonprofit fair where the nonprofits could come set up little booths, and young people would come and talk to the various nonprofits, learn about what they did, and the goal being to connect and be able to make those differences on issues and in areas that they are passionate about. But I do love the idea of a guide, and something that again, I think that communities, employers, that we could all distribute again to get people making those connections and ultimately helping them to stick around longer. So I love it.
Awesome. Another question here. So many of New Hampshire's brightest students leave the state to attend college elsewhere. As we mentioned, UNH can sometimes, it's not necessarily an attractive option to many students because of its high cost of in-state tuition. Financial aid packages from top out-of-state private colleges can make the net cost of those schools only slightly higher than paying the full in-state tuition at UNH. And when those students leave, they often don't come back. Without further state support for public higher education, we are pretty much doomed to brain drain in New Hampshire. My own kids have left and will likely never come back. Any idea if we will ever see greater funding for public higher education in New Hampshire to work to entice more of our kids to stay here?
Yeah, it's short answer. I don't know. I mean, it's certainly something that Stay Work Play is advocating for, to get higher funding. But also too, I mean, one of the things I've heard, and maybe somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but last I heard that even if New Hampshire doubles the amount of funding for state schools on a per capita basis, that we're still, I think, would still only be like 47th or 48th in the country per capita. So we have a long way to go to get there. So I don't see this as an issue that's going to be solved in the short term to really bring down costs. So I think it's something we need to keep plugging away at. And I think the more people we have advocating on this, the better. I mean, it can't just be Stay Work Play and the Business and Industry Association and the College and University Council. Again, we're all the usual suspects, right? We need we need students, we need parents. It has to be voters talking to their elected officials. And the more people we have doing that, the harder it is to ignore. And like they say, I used to be a community organizer. They say in community organizing, you have to make an issue hot enough that a legislator and elected official can't sit on it. They have to get out and feel like they have to do something. And I don't know if we're quite there yet. It's and again, we have so many other challenges, and revenue being chief among them. But money goes where the political will is, and so we need to get there. We're not quite there yet.
Thank you. Sort of a question here that's in a similar vein. The decision to attend college out of state is made in high school. Any plans to get input from that group?
Yes, and I kind of hinted earlier that Stay Work Play recognizes the need to really go younger in our outreach, in our messaging, and to really, I think, be able to inform not just younger students, and I'm thinking certainly high school, maybe even late middle school, because I think even by like junior year, people have kind of an idea of what they want to do after high school. But really to inform not just the students themselves, but the influencers on those students, parents being chief among them, and even school counselors. I was talking with a recent graduate, I won't say what town, but was saying that, her school counselor told her, basically, hey, if you want a really good education and you really want to make something of yourself, you need to go out of state, to go to school. And I think that's whether the implicit or explicit message that oftentimes we're sending to young people, in this state. And I get it. Like Boston has, a ton of great schools. UNH is a great school. We have a lot of great schools here, and up and down the line. But again, people don't know to the caller or from the attendee from the community college system. I think a lot of people just don't know, what programs exist. Whether it's at the university level, at the community college level, and the trades level. And so, to the extent that we can all do a better job of educating folks, not just to the educational programs that are here, but the jobs that are here too. I was talking with someone in the Lakes region a few months ago, and this company, a manufacturer, they make parts for stuff that goes up in space. I mean, how cool is that? We have a lot of cool companies doing cool things, but again, they're just so low key that people don't know about them. And if they don't know about them, they're going to think, well, I just have to leave if I want a cool job, or if I want to make money, or whatever, I need to leave the state to do it. When that's just not the case. Again, not to say we don't have issues that we need to address. We certainly do. But a start would be, getting people, of influence, over young people's lives to become better informed themselves. And we certainly have a role in doing that at Stay Work Play, and as do we all, I think.
Thank you. Let's see, we have a comment here from Pete about including the military and those transitioning in the young group. Are you guys doing any specific outreach in terms of to folks who are in the military or are recently out of the military in the state?
Not Stay Work Play specifically. However, there is a group out there called the New Hampshire Young Veterans Network, and led by a woman named Christina Baker. And they're doing a great job of working to help young veterans in the state to transition, and to be able to put down those roots here, to network with each other and employers across the state. So we certainly support them, as we try to support in various fashions the other young professionals networks across the state. So check out the New Hampshire Young Veterans Network.
Thank you. Is part of your advocacy work focused on bringing other groups on board with the vision and mission of Stay Work Play? For example, affordable housing, the cost of education. They can be a real point of contention in communities across the state. How do you bring these folks on board with the ideas that you're proposing?
Yeah, it's certainly something that we recognize that Stay Work Play. We're not leading like the housing efforts. I mean, we're not housing experts. Those aren't. We're contributing to the extent that we can. But I would say with any issue, there's no one organization or even no one industry that's really going to move the needle. It has to be kind of a coalition. And I think what we do at Stay Work Play, whether it's on the funding of the university system or housing affordability or childcare, whatever it is try to provide and show others how it impacts young people in their decisions to stay or to leave. So we're able to, I think, give a little bit more ammunition to others that they can talk about through those lenses, as well as their own lenses. So for employers, we work to be able to say that you may not think that you have an interest in housing or childcare, but your employees sure do. And if they don't have these things, then they're going to go elsewhere, and you're not going to be able to operate your business. So to the extent that we can help to inform and educate a variety of, whether it's employers, individuals, or other organizations to these frames, we're working to do so.
Thanks. Another question here from Frank. In general, most senior discounts are available to people over the age of 62. Yet in the state of New Hampshire, fishing and hunting licenses have a senior discount beginning at age 68. Florida residents age 65 or older fish free, and Maine charges $50 for a lifetime license for those 65 and older. Why the disparity?
That I do not have an answer to that. I'm afraid. I'm not sure why that is the case.
Okay. another question here. Were there any specific recommendations that came out of the panel discussion on how people can work to create more inclusive communities, just in terms of concrete ways to be a better ally for people of color in New Hampshire, for instance, things like organizations to get involved with, policies to advocate for, things like that?
Yeah, there was a lot, and I would encourage folks to, you can watch we recorded the entire panel discussion, and it's available on the Stay Work Play website, stayworkplay.org, and go to, I believe it's programs, and then you can drop down to New Hampshire Next, and you can click, and you'll see a whole video there, and you'll get everything right from the panelists themselves. But yeah, there were a number of recommendations that were made, and I think they really kind of center on on us, and I think that's being an ally. I think was kind of hitting the nail on the head, and not acting as white people like we have all the answers and we know what needs to ask, and to ask how we can be an ally. And every community, they said too, one of the takeaways I had was first of all, not to assume that, let's not lump all people of color into a people of color category. Different groups are going to have different needs and wants, and so being able to engage and ask those questions from a respectful standpoint, recognizing that the needs of the Latino community may be different from the African immigrant community, which may be different from the Indian American community, and so forth. So I would be here all day if we were talking about specific recommendations, but I would definitely encourage everybody to go watch that panel discussion, the Diversity Matters panel discussion. It was a wealth of knowledge.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, I think we have time for one last question here from Bill. One factor in the cost of higher education is cost control. So compared to systems elsewhere, the New Hampshire public education system has a poor record of controlling the increase in cost. Perhaps an approach to selling additional taxpayer subsidy is tying it to better cost control on the part of the schools. So I guess it's more of a comment, but are you guys working for any particular policies in that regard?
It's I can't point to any particular. There's no legislative bill or anything that is addressing this, but I would say that we all have a price to play, or a piece to play here, and that it's not something. I agree. Just throwing more money at something doesn't necessarily improve the outcome. There needs to we're all in this together, and I think the colleges, universities themselves have a role to play to spend money responsibly and wisely. At the same time, you don't get, there's no such thing as a free lunch. I mean, we have to pay for things at the end of the day. And, the fact still remains that, we're still dead last in per capita funding, for the higher education, public higher education system in the state. So it's a long way of saying that, both sides need to work together to make tuition more affordable to more people in New Hampshire, so that we can keep more of them here long term.
Well, thank you, Will. Thank you to everyone who showed up today. I think we had about 65 folks with us today, and just a really great, so many questions, so many comments. I really appreciate everyone's engagement with this. Stayworkplay.org, everyone, please go check them out. Follow them on all the social media channels. Stay engaged. As someone who moved here 3 years ago from out of state, and who's 29, so I'm right in the middle of your demographic. I really appreciate all the work you're doing, and very thankful for having you with us today, even under sort of irregular circumstances. So really appreciate it, Will. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thanks to everyone for joining today, and thanks for your interest and your time.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you later.